Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Mentors for Military. I'm Robert.
I'm Paul.
And we just had an incredible weekend. But before we get into that topic and everything, want to talk about some of the ways in which you can help support the podcast. One of those is to, of course, like and share on social media. Mentors4mil is how you find us there. It's the same thing for right here on YouTube. Make sure that you say that you want to follow us subscribe on the channel and everything, and hit that little bell that you see up in the top right. And when you hit that bell, it'll remind you every time that we're going to be dropping a new episode, which is going to be really important as we start dropping some of the cool stuff that we did. You can also make comments and everything, either on the videos or go out to Spotify, to Apple, or some of your favorite podcast apps and everything. You can listen to the entire episodes there, as well as leave a comment and a like to support us. And if you're really feeling frisky, you can go out to patreon.com and you can find us there as well at Mentors4mil, and drop us a dono, give a donation and help support the podcast. It's allowing us to bring incredible equipment that you see around here and guests and stuff to our show. And anything that I missed there?
I mean, we can't thank you guys enough for supporting us and liking and subscribing and listening for the last 6-7 years. It's been an incredible ride, and we just want to keep going and making it better and do more trips, do more exciting videography, more exciting YouTube. And, we can't thank you guys enough because you're helping us do that, like this last weekend when we went up to 5th Ranger Training. It was pretty awesome. Couldn't have done it without you.
We have, several Patreon patrons that we would like to, acknowledge and stuff. Again, like Paul said, thank you guys who continuously support us in that manner. And, again, for everybody that's liking and sharing the podcast. So let's talk a little bit about 5th Ranger Training Battalion, because we got a chance to go up there. We're going to be dropping some videos along the way of some of the experiences that we had there. But why do people even go to Ranger School in the first place? People may ask. It's the premier leadership course.
It is. It's the premier leadership course, maybe in the military. That's my opinion. And one of the big reasons you go if you're in 75th Ranger Regiment is because you have to. but you go because you cannot be a leader in that organization, which is the standard bearer of the Army,
right?
That unit is, without that school. And so there's a lot of faith and fidelity in the quality of that education you're going to get. I know me personally, I could not have been a leader in the military without that school in combat. There's just no way. My feeling of going into combat before and going into combat after as a leader was polar opposites. And when I got out of Ranger School, I knew I was going to do the best of my ability, and I knew what I was doing. So the reason is, you're in that school with SF guys that have served for 20 years. Sometimes senior officers, sometimes senior enlisted are there, or mostly staff enlisted, not really senior enlisted. And then you've got the IBOLIC students. They've just graduated and they're brand new officers, and they're going to go and they're going to be infantry leaders. And now as a young private, I get to interact with those guys who have a real military education from an officer's perspective.
And it's not just them. I mean, you've got Air Force and Navy and Marines and all different walks of life that decides to walk through.
The guys from the 82nd.
Yeah.
That's a great light infantry unit. So just anecdotally, for me, it was great to see how those guys operated and see what we did the same, what we did different, because it's an excellent unit. And they have a very similar light infantry history and continuing role. So it's the cross-training, the people you meet and what you get from them. It's massive. And it's the instructors, of course, too. You think about that.
Top notch.
So now you've got this conglomeration of excellent students who are motivated, driven. I mean, they're there because they want to be there.
Yeah.
And then you've got the cadre they're all Victor qualified, which means you've been to Ranger School. They're all, have relevant experience. And then they get extensive training so that when they're teaching you, it's uniform. If you're from instructor to instructor, it doesn't matter. They have the same base knowledge. And when it comes to doctrine, it's just an excellent organization.
One of the things I didn't realize is that in the case of the Ranger instructors, to get to where they can actually evaluate a platoon leader and they exercise on patrols, you've had to have had about 18 months of experience before you even allowed to grade that component of it, or squad leader level, maybe like at about 12 months and so on and so forth. So there's different degrees of competency and capabilities within that organization that are pretty outstanding. And I think you'll find that all the way across the course. But I want to also, at this time frame, give a little bit of a shout out to 5th Ranger Training Battalion, who allowed us to come up there when we picked up the phone and we called them. And, I spoke with Lieutenant Colonel Green and said, hey, we'd love to really expose and bring forward all these myths and everything's around what, the mountain phase is, what that portion of the Ranger School, because it is by far the most challenging portion of the 3 phases of Ranger School.
I think so, yeah.
And, at least some people say there's the physical side of it and everything. It's in the Derby phase and such. But when you get to the mountain phase, you're pretty tired, you're pretty hungry, and then you got to really focus because you're on the mountains. But
you're in a dangerous environment in the first place. You're tired and hungry. You
start walking patrols on those mountains and everything, you better know what you're doing. And so when they answered the call and said yes, no, we want to break all that down. We want to be able to showcase what we do here. Again, the professionalism, the caliber of NCOs and officers that are at this location, and not only that, but the types of people that end up coming through. They're the regular Joes and Sallys and, whatever. I mean, they're just regular people that come from all walks of life that want to be challenged. And I think that's a little bit around you want your circle of friends to be people who will elevate you.
Exactly.
And so these are like-minded people who are trying to go through this training.
Yeah, very like-minded people. And it reminds me of like the early years of my career. Really, the first year I got to basic training, and I was so proud. So I'm like, cool, I get to serve my country. And I'm looking at my drill sergeants, and they've got, their cool guy badges and their, staff NCOs that are the best of the best, and they're instructing me. But my peers was a little more mixed. I was in 11 Charlie. It's a mortar. We were a mortar only basic platoon, and some of those guys I wouldn't have a beer with. I didn't even want to be in the barracks with them. It was like I don't even know how the heck they got in the Army. And some of them got weeded out in basic, but not all. Yeah. And so the quality of product that came out of basic training was what it needed to be at that time. But I thought, I don't know if I want all of these people to be my peers. I don't know if I want to go to combat and get my military education this way. So I ended up in airborne school, and then that kind of narrowed the field a little bit. And I'm looking around, I'm like, all right, this is more like it. These guys are more like me. Right. They're driven and stuff, but it was still not everybody, And so I was like, all right, I need to get a little bit more refined. And that's when I realized I needed to go to SF or Rangers or something that would weed out more people so that I could be around the most driven, excellent, dedicated, hardworking people that were going to make sure that I came home from combat. That was really one of the fundamental bases of my concerns.
Just to be clear, you didn't go in with like an option 40 then?
No, I had a airborne contract, 11 X-ray, and I did pretty good in basic training. I didn't know I could ask for option 40 then, or I might have. But my recruiter had warned me, like, hey, when you get done with basic and you get done with airborne, you're not going to want to continue training. I kind of had a feeling he didn't characterize me accurately, but I thought this guy's done it, so we'll sign the contract. In airborne school, I did pick up option 40 kind of by accident. I went to a brief with a buddy, and I was like, I'll go to the brief with you because you can't go alone. You got to have your battle buddy. And by the end of it, it was pretty much a done deal.
Well, see, that's an important factor that I think we try to call out in some of these episodes is that, you can end up getting into Ranger Regiment, whether or not you're in airborne school, OSIT, which is one station unit training, basic training, and it could be you're at an installation with an MOS that's both basic training and AIT, or when you get to AIT location, if you have the right MOS, it's a fit and stuff. They have liaison people there that do that. But your path to Ranger School was a little bit different because you chose to go to Ranger Regiment. Like you said, it's a rite of passage. If you're going to stay in regiment and you're going to excel and move up through the ranks and everything, there's a point of which you have to go to Ranger School, and if you don't make it,
Yes.
then you don't carry the standard any longer. And for the most part, unless they allow you to, you're out of regiment. That's it. And,
Pretty much. Sometimes you'll get a gimme if you were in really, really good standing in your service so far, had been exemplary, then very often you'd get another shot.
Right.
Or if you were low density MOS, at that time we needed SATCOM guys, so if you had to take 2 or 3 cracks at it, they'd let you do that. For infantry is a little different, but really the reason I got there at all was because I befriended somebody in basic training who, him and I wanted to do more. And we kind of looked around us and like, I think I can perform a little bit better than that guy, or I'm not sure if this is the peer group I want. And we were the ones, me and him and a couple other guys that were, after lights out, we'd throw on our kit and we'd be doing sit-ups and push-ups and all this other stuff, just trying to make sure we were going to max our PT test. And he was really motivated to go to Ranger Regiment, and because we were friends, that's what got me into the brief, because I was going to Italy. I wasn't given that.
That's right. You were going to 173rd.
Yeah, I was like, when I walked into that briefing, I was like, there is zero probability that I'm giving up my orders to 173rd and going to be a Ranger and continue training and staying on Fort Benning. But it just shows you the value of your peer group, because this wasn't in my mind, and it led to literally the rest of my life. The whole rest of my life would be completely different if I hadn't befriended the guy who I thought would make me better and would drive me and be a good peer to get through basic training in airborne school.
Makes total sense. And I mean, you think about those guys and the path, by the way, let me start off with the path, by the way, to Ranger School doesn't always have to lead through what you just described in regiment. Most of the guys who have been successful, who have told us that, they had the best chance of getting through and actually successfully completing it, were people who were 25 to 30 years old, because, they were more mature. They were later in their career phase and everything. And they realized the value of the school. And again, they were hungry for, additional training, the challenge, pushing themselves to the limit and those types of things. And if they'd have gone there maybe at a younger age, they wouldn't have appreciated truly what it's about. And they probably wouldn't have been successful in doing so.
And also, as when you're young and you haven't experienced as much, your gauge is a little off when it comes to hardship or what may be possible or not. And I think the older guys, if you're 25 and you've kind of made your way and you're into the military, you've experienced some things. And so you might get to Ranger School and think, okay, this is very physically challenging and they got this is an austere environment, but it's not going to be so shocking to the system. I think some of the young guys, it's like this big mythical thing that they've got to go and do. And I'm just Paul. I'm just Joe that came in and now I've got to go and climb the mountain and fight the lava monster with the sword, like the Marine commercials,
Yeah.
So.
And my path was a little bit different, because I had always wanted to go through these types of premier programs and never got a chance to do it because I wasn't at the right installation. And again, you get to talking to some of the guys that are even Ranger instructors, and it was much of the same way. They got an assignment, let's say, to Fort Benning or to something of that nature that allowed them the opportunity to pick up some of these schools they wouldn't otherwise go. And for me, it was kind of that similar type of thing. Man, I'm right here at the installation. I have Pathfinder School, Airborne School, Ranger School, all these opportunities that are right here in front of me. And I want to go and work with the best. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go to Ranger School, got injured in Airborne School, but the opportunity to work still side by side with some of those people that were there on Fort Benning, that were either within the battalion, 3rd Battalion or 75th Ranger Regiment. We're at 4th RTB, up at 5th RTB and stuff like that, was really exciting. And this is my first opportunity to actually go and experience something that I wanted to see. But I know I've got a card where I could drive up on base. I mean, basically, if you have a driver's license and a reason to be there, for the most part, you're going to be fine and getting up Camp Merrill in Dahlonega, Georgia. But going there and being able to see it and the way in which they exposed it to us was pretty exciting for me. You've been there. You got a chance to relive it. Well,
it was exciting for me, too. I mean, I didn't know how to sort out my emotions on the way there, because that was a stressful time and lots of good memories and all this stuff. But we got up on the rappel tower and I'm like, man, this is so freaking cool, because I love you, Rob. I mean, we've had a great time on the podcast and we're really good friends and you've been an excellent mentor to me. But I've got a couple buddies like you that I wish we could have served together.
Yeah.
Because, if you had been my team leader, squad leader, I would have been a better soldier, and we enjoy each other's company. We like the same things and we're not afraid of hardship. So getting to like do some rappels and some mountaineering training up there with you was awesome. It was like I don't know, like a little time machine for a minute. But it also, you get up there and I was on top of the rappel tower, and I'm getting all my kit ready. And it's like you're leaning back towards the edge, testing your gear, and I was like, you get that adrenaline jump, and you get that nervous feeling. Don't let any airborne rangers or airborne anything tell you they're not afraid of heights. Everybody's afraid of heights. So it was nice to get that feeling again.
Yeah, it was kind of a surreal period, and for me, getting up on the tower and you've already gone through the knots training and everything, and they've showed you all the different knots that you have to understand. And we've got video and stuff we'll be dropping about that, about the ones that you actually have to know well enough to pass. And you get multiple times to do that. And that's part of the instruction we'll have within the video of what it takes to get through that segment. But once you have those knots in that rope set up the way it's supposed to be, you feel pretty confident about you're tugging on it and pulling, about it's going to carry your weight. But until you get up there in that tower and you hook on, even with the safety cable, and they tell you lean back and put all your weight, and you're leaning back, and if that thing's not there, you're going over the side type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And without the safety, so the safety and everything sure gives you the confidence, but it's got a long loop. So you're truly testing what you did and whether or not it's actually being effective. And the confidence that you have in the ranger instructors that are standing there on the tower with you, that they're not going to let you go down that wall unless they know full on. They test your equipment, they look at it, they spin it around, they're tugging on it, they're doing everything to make sure. We've done all the pre-check and everything before you go down. And at that moment, when they unhook that safety cable, things are real at that point.
Oh yeah, that's what's cool about it. It's like now it's all in my hands,
right?
And when, like you said, when you're hooked up and you're on the safety and you've got the RI right there, that guy is so knowledgeable, and the way they do their block of instruction, like this guy knows this inside and out better than anybody. So if he says it's going to work, that's like him saying the sun's going to come up tomorrow in my mind. I'm like, okay, this is absolutely going to work. And then you get down on the, you're on your own rope, and it's like, okay, well, now this is all in my hands, and my belayer is my safety. And it's like, all right, do I have it?
Well, first, especially when you take that first step and you go out on that ledge,
fun, isn't it?
So they have you go over the tower, and then they've got like a 2x4, maybe a 2x6 or whatever that's running up underneath it, maybe about, 2 feet below the ledge.
2-3
something
feet,
like that. So you step down onto it, and then that's when you're supposed to lean all the way back and
you L out.
Yeah, and spread your legs and everything, and you realize then that you are using nothing but the cables, the techniques that they gave you, and the instruction, everything,
But when you think about that, Rob, like if you and I just decided, hey, let's YouTube some videos and we'll figure out how to rappel and this and that, because I'd have to relearn. I haven't rappelled probably since Ranger school or shortly thereafter.
It's a long time.
I mean, I didn't even remember, the exact proper way to brake and all of that stuff. So it's good to get that refresher. But we could probably go and we could, maybe join a climbing group on Facebook or something like that and get some gear and go out and find a cliff somewhere up in North Georgia and then try to rappel. And it would probably go okay because we're not idiots. But the difference between doing that, like seeking out an Army Ranger mountaineering course that we get to go to and have those guys instruct us, it's like, these are the best guys to do this. There's all these safety measures in place. They do it all the time with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Ranger students. There's a big difference in how fast you can get from nervous about doing something new to doing multiple rappels down a tower, completely comfortable, just feeling good. And I think that's because it's your peers. It's the people that you seek out. And when I want to do something, I always try to seek out who's the best guy or gal that can do this thing and is willing to teach me.
Right.
And that's where I try to go if I can. And it's
Well, and you're putting confidence in those individuals in a very strong way. And that means not only in the instruction and stuff like that, but what you're talking about or we're talking about is throughout your career. You're putting the faith and the confidence in the guys to the left and the right of you. You're putting the confidence in the leadership and your capability to lead others. And it's that kind of that circle. But you're also wanting to test your mustard and, go a little bit further and see, hey, is this all that it is? What else can I do? How farther can I push my limits? And this type of school is a perfect opportunity for you to do that. And the reason why also mountain phase is so difficult is by the time you get done with Darby, I mean, you're kind of whooped. You may have been getting 4 hours worth of sleep. You're probably eating, maybe 1,000 calories a day or something of that, or...
I mean, you're not eating enough calories.
You're not eating enough, and you've probably lost 30, 40 pounds at this point.
And someone my size would probably lose about 20 to 25.
Yeah.
I did. I lost 25 pounds in Darby phase.
Yeah.
Just gone in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I thought they weren't feeding us enough, but actually, I was glad we got to go up there. They feed you more calories in Ranger School than the recommended daily allowance for your average American diet, which is 2,000 calories. You're actually very often taking in more calories, obviously.
Especially in mountain phase. I mean, that's the point. Yeah, they start feeding you, but you don't even recognize it, to your point. You don't even realize you're eating it.
No, you don't realize it. But
you're burning it off big time.
And you're starving. I mean, I don't know how many calories you burn, doing a patrol in the mountains, but it's a lot. It's got to be 6,000 calories a day, probably more.
Yeah.
And you're tired.
Yeah.
And, yeah, we got to smell the Ranger students, but... their formation was going past us. That we watched an incoming class from Darby phase coming into mountain phase. And, man, you could smell those guys 15, 20, 30 feet away.
Yeah.
If there's a formation of them farther because their muscles are breaking down and you smell ammonia and you smell, like literally the tissues in your body are breaking down and dying.
Yeah.
And these guys are just, they got a duffel bag in each hand, a rucksack on their back, their kit on their chest, and another duffel bag on top of their rucksack, and they're just humping, just to get to that's just to get to formation before you get chow for lunch. That's tough, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But there was some discussion and stuff by both the command sergeant major and the colonel whenever the team arrived from 4th Ranger Training Battalion, that came up from Darby in the first initial phase, that if you do everything that these, Ranger instructors tell you to do, 85% of the people here or greater are going to pass this phase. And you're going to go on to get your tab, because if you can do it here, you should be able to then continue that process when you get to 6 RTB. So it's not just because you did 5th RTB that in the mountain phase that's why you get your tab, but it's more of you've now created the mindset in the most difficult, austere environment and challenging environment with, like you said, less sleep, less food, everything else, and you accomplished it because you paid attention, you were laser focused, and it just comes to you. But also, you rely a lot on your peer group. You're
100%.
Yeah, your Ranger buddy.
No one graduates Ranger School on their own.
Right.
On their own effort. That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
It's 100% teamwork. And I was really kind of inspired by Command Sergeant Major Blackshear's, incomers brief or newcomers brief to the students, because it was something I hadn't thought of. He's like, if you're a private, you've got, SF guys that are here that have been in for a long time, and they're going to get their tab, and they know stuff about, everything. Mm-hmm. And you're never going to get a chance to get with those guys maybe for a few more years until you go to selection yourself. And the bullet guys that are coming through on their way to their infantry
officer
commands,
basic leadership course.
Yeah, the infantry, the new infantry officers.
Yeah,
that all have to go through. If you're a private, you don't get to sit down and plan with your PL and see how his planning process works and understand all of that stuff for years.
Yeah.
And so now you're there and you might be in a squad full of bullet guys, which was my case. After I recycled, I think we had like 6 brand new lieutenants.
Oh, wow.
That was my squad. And we had a couple guys from 82nd or maybe 101st, can't remember. And it was awesome because it's like, okay, well, at that point I was like, I pretty much got a handle on the, platoon sergeant enlisted side of things, sorta, at least for Ranger School purposes. And so we really bounced off each other well, and I learned so much about that. So it was sort of like it created a circle for me. That squad was like a high quality circle of people, and I didn't have access to anybody else except for my RIs. And that's how you become successful in that school, is you have that good core group that you're relying on, and you're bouncing off each other, and the people that know more are mentoring you. And when you know more, you're offering that knowledge. And now all of a sudden you get out, and the man that's standing in that graduation is nowhere near the man that walked in to that school day one for Rap Week and made a Ranger attempt. Because you're the same person, but your capabilities,
Right.
And now I have all these friends from that squad, so if I have a question that would be appropriate for, a young infantry captain, well, I'd know 4 or 5 of them, that I went to Ranger school with. And you
That
can call
network.
them up.
Yeah.
That network, that circle.
Also something that he said, just for, those of you who think, well, what about if I recycle or I fail, how is the next team or the next group going to embrace me as I come in? Mm-hmm. And we saw there's probably at least 30, 40 recycles every class. And,
Is there that many?
Yeah, that's exactly what the colonel said.
Wow.
and Major Gonzalez. So, we didn't see that many that came running up that joined their platoons, and they were, their RIs were hauling out people's names and stuff so they can go and join their new little squad and such. But at any rate, one of the things that, again, the CSM mentioned, the Command Sergeant Major, was that, listen, you're going to have people here who are recycles. Don't look down on them. Actually, get with them, because they went through this. They actually have been here. Yeah, sure, they got to some point, and for whatever reason, they are back now going through it again. But they've been here and kind of done that, and you should get with them to learn from them of what the mistakes were and how important certain aspects are. Like, you don't realize until you get down into the lowers, the area there where you start doing, say, knots and tower, the importance that you have to apply in these knots. You've got like a minute to do these different knots, and it's not a knot. It's a combination of knots with a rope.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got to do it in a timed event and everything, and you're already nervous and such. And this may be your first time ever dealing with knots.
Yeah.
And so, you get a chance then to work with somebody that's recycled before you get to that point, and they say, hey, listen, knots are important. Let me show you guys some tips and tricks that, my RI or, what we learned in the last cycle. And all of a sudden, guys are starting to pick up these things, and they are able to ace it a whole lot better. And especially if I was a guy that had a Ranger buddy that recycled, like you, then I would have been with you and going, Paul, man, you got to show me, show me what it was and help me through this thing, because I may not be as strong as you are in that aspect.
Well, and I think even going through some of these schools like this, like if I was getting ready for sniper school or something, it really didn't matter the school. I'd ask one of my buddies that, we were on equal footing aside from maybe one school or qualifier. I'm like, hey, how'd you do it? Or what? And just knowing somebody that's done it before, it's like, okay, well, I can do what this guy can do for the most part. So I got a pretty good shot at this. Or if you're nervous about, maybe you're from somewhere where you never had the opportunity to do anything like a challenge course or an obstacle course or rappel, that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Just like airborne school, it's a scary thing, even though it's as safe as it could be for that kind of event. And just having somebody and trust that's been through it and say, hey, I'm scared about this. Like, don't worry about it, buddy. It's going to be easy. By the time you get up there, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And there have been many points in my military education where I'm like, man, this is going to be tough. I don't know if I can do it. Or, this is very intimidating because it's of whatever reason. And you talk to one of your guys and they're like, no, I did it. And, this is kind of how it's going to go. So having somebody that knows the lay of the land can just that extra bit of confidence. Anything that can take away that little bit of self-doubt, anything that can quiet that voice in the back of your mind that's saying, I don't know if I got this, can take you from failure to success.
It means you have to humble yourself quite a bit.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And that was another one of the things that he pointed out and said, humility is something that you need to really understand here by going through this course. You're going to have to humble yourself. You may be a guy that came from 75th Ranger Regiment and, you've got to show humility, or an officer, you've got to show humility, or those types of things, because to your point, they want them to interact and learn from each other. But, we have talked about this in previous episodes. You are kind of a product of the circle of friends you hang out with. And if you think about even going back to your youth, in early days and everything, the reason why you got in trouble when you start thinking about it is because of friends you hung out with. And your parents, your mother probably came and told you, your father go, the reason why, Paul, you keep getting in trouble and everything is because those 3 thugs you keep hanging out with.
Hanging out with those scumbags. Yep.
So, yeah, and the same thing is true within the military career. You may be labeled and such in the same way. And, and that's why it's so important that while you're going through the school that you take care of one another and in the program, and you learn that you are the product, because you could get lumped into a group that
I think that's
didn't get good.
I don't know if it matters if you're in the school or not.
Yeah,
I
true.
think that, I know from past experience, because I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie and I'm not risk averse, and sometimes you make friends with people that are similar, but maybe they're not as moral or whatever, and maybe you're not either.
Yeah.
And then you get judged, your character gets judged because of the people you're hanging out with, and you don't realize, but you've been hanging out with these people, and it's like, I've let my values slide a little bit, and I'm not being true to what I want to do, and I'm not accomplishing what I want to do. It's the same reason people move out of bad neighborhoods. You move out of a bad neighborhood because the density of peer quality is not there. And the people I know that are the most successful, they have good peers. They say that you're going to be most like the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. And that's not, I don't think that's compulsory.
Yeah.
That's just how a human being works. So you got to pick those people very, very carefully. If you're spending a lot of time with people that you don't really like, or you're not really invested in, or you're kind of ambivalent about their values, or they don't line up with your goals, you got to make some changes, or you're going to end up in that ambivalent area, because it's like it's like an initiative thing.
Yeah.
You got to take the initiative to be where you want to be, take the initiative to find the people who can help you to get where you want to be.
Yeah. And the same is, of course, true there. I mean, you get peer reviewed, and during the course. And so it's very important for you to make good friends, to be humble, to make sure you extend the olive leaf, and understand and learn from one another and everything. And
but that's why that school works. That's why you can take a private and a young lieutenant and an E6 or E7 from Special Forces group, and a foreign student, and some 82nd guys, and some of them are NCOs and a lot of them are privates. It just depends, and mash them all together and work, because they've created a circle for you with the selection process. The guys that don't make it through the pre-ranger certs, and the guys that don't make it through RAP week, and the guys that don't pass Darby phase and peers, and the guys that don't pass, lowers and uppers on Mount Yonah. And by the time you get to Florida, it's like, okay, now the guys that were not as motivated, or this and that. And the Cadre is the same way. The reason they're able to put out that standard of excellence is because everybody is like-minded, and it's sort of a manufactured peer selection process when you're Cadre there, or when you're support staff there, because it's like, okay, these guys are not meeting the standard, they're out of there. Then when you get out of the military, you don't have anybody to help you do that, and so you got to try to kind of figure out, okay, this guy I need to spend more time with because he's helping me, learn and grow and be more successful, whether it's business or personal, which is, what I find with your friendship. And so anytime I get a chance to hang out with you, Rob, I'm like, all right, let's do it. Buy the plane ticket. We'll go down and hang out with Rob, and, because I know I'm going to get better. And that's,
I appreciate that. I think it's a mutual feeling, because what your experience is and what you've been through does the same thing. And again, it goes back to, making sure that you select the right, what they call the circle of 5, make sure that you're selecting the right group. If you don't feel challenged enough, if you don't feel like you're getting everything that you need out of it, then go to something like this kind of premier leadership course, and to build that network, to find the right like-minded people, or search out assignments in harder training and harder schools. If you're out in the private sector, do the exact same thing. There are opportunities galore out there for you to really expand your horizon, and whether it's a hobby or it's a job or whatever the case may be, there are opportunities out there galore for you to be able to do that type of stuff. And again, can't thank everybody at 5th Ranger Training Battalion. We're going to get into more and more of each of the different pieces that we experienced, which was very cool. But we're also going to get a chance to expose you guys to some of the Ranger instructors at different levels, whether they were from the S3 shop, which is, the operational piece, or they were first sergeants or Ranger instructors. And They came and sat down with us, and we're going to be dropping those episodes and their amazing stories and journey and such, and what they talk about when we ask them about the 5th RTB, about the training, and about what they can take away or offer you as suggestions. So stay tuned. We got a lot more stuff to drop. And again, if you're listening to this and you've stuck all the way, go out there, give us a like, leave us a comment, tell us what you'd like to see and hear. We're going to have a lot more opportunities to go to Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, and some of these other installations, 101st up at Fort Campbell. And we want to be able to...
Maybe Hawaii?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe Hawaii, because the 25th, we've got a couple folks that are actually leaving 5th RTB going to the 25th. Yeah. So that'd be awesome, to go out there. And so what we want you to do, though, is make sure you tell your friends and all that about the podcast and what's available out there. And if you haven't already gone out and listened to us out there on your favorite your favorite podcast app like Spotify and Apple and Podbean and, all these other types of avenues and stuff, please do so, because we have a lot of shows, about 320 episodes already as of this date, that you can go out and listen to. So please do that. And thanks so much again for tuning in to Mentors4mil.
Thanks, guys.